Hello there everyone. Today I want to show you how to make these butterflies on a cord running down the middle there. And that's what it looks like. So this one I've made, in this case, I've just turned into a bracelet length. So it'd be nice, gonna have all these butterflies going around your wrist. You can obviously make them smaller if you want to by using a different type of cord. So then I've just attached clasp and extender chain by using cord ends as well. You can finish off yours however you want to. But then there you have your butterflies going all the way around. So we're going to show you how to make this technique today. So if you want to learn how to make these little butterflies, then keep watching. So for this technique, all we're going to need is some cord. And what I have here is a 0.8mm nylon cord, and I'm just working with this purple colour. I thought that would be a nice colour for the butterflies. Now what you can do is really use any type of cord or thread that you want to. It'll work just the same, the technique itself. All that'll be different is really changing up the size of your final piece. So for instance, if you're using thinner cord, then that'll give you some nice and smaller, delicate butterflies, so that could give a really nice effect as well. So let's get our cord out and let's get started. So then as for the lengths of cord that we need, what I have in total here is 14 lengths of my cord. Now what we'll just need to be aware of is we need to have 13 lengths of about 1 meter each. So that's the majority of them here, and then we have one that needs to be 2 meters and 20 centimeters by itself. And what I've then done with all of them is just put them together in one end and tied a regular knot just to hold them in place while we're then going to work on it, because we can undo this at the end and then finish off the ends separately. What I'm then working on here is just a project macrame board, so it's going to have a nice surface, and then also I'm just using T-pins throughout to help keep my work in place. It's going to make it much easier to work with. And then what I'm going to do is take my cords here and just grab the knot first, then place this on my board and just pin this down so we can start off the bracelet, the technique here. So the purpose of these pins really is just to keep our work in place, which makes it much easier to work with. So there we go. And then what you want to do is separate out this longest one, so the one that's 2 meters and 20 centimeters, we need to separate that out from the rest, because this is going to run down through the whole center of the bracelet, and because we need to use that the most, that's why it's so much longer than the rest of them. So we're then going to have this cord running down through the center of the whole bracelet, where we're going to have the wings coming out from that center on each their own side. That's going to then form those butterflies. So to start that center cord off, what we'll do is grab hold of all these cords that are all together, so all the shorter ones, and then this long one is going to be the working cord that's going to create that center in the middle there. And all we want to do is just, it's coming out from the back there, we need to make some half hitches around all these other cords. So these are all going to be almost like one holding cord all together. So I'm going to take this around my finger, back around all those cords, and pull the whole thing through the loop. So it looks like this. So it's a 6. Make sure you're pulling it through itself as well, that loop that it's created, to make sure you're making a knot. Tighten that, and then I'm going to make another one to tighten that first knot in place. So this is a double half hitch, same thing, and then just make sure you're holding these kind of a bit taut when you're tightening your knots, and tighten that right underneath. So that's your first double half hitch. Now to create the core, what we need to do is, if we keep doing this, we're going to end up getting a spiral. To avoid that, I'm going to bring my working cord underneath all the holding cords there, and then pull it all the way out to the other side, and then we'll do the same thing, but we're just swapping hands. So now I'm holding the holding cords there in the opposite hand, and then I take my working cord around my finger with the other hand, back around all those holding cords, and back through the loop. So on the other side here, we get something that looks like this, so a reverse 6, and again, make sure you come through that loop. And then when you tighten this also just below the previous knot. Make sure you pull it nice and tight. Make another one for a double half hitch and tighten that. And then we just keep doing this. So every time you made one double half hitch with one side, you bring it underneath the middle there, and then just repeat with opposite hands. And that's how we're basically going to build up the core of the bracelet. So to begin with, we're just going to make a little length of this before we start building on the very first butterfly. Once we then have this little section that we've just done, so we have the beginning of our core, what we need to do now is start getting all these cords ready to be able to make the wings on both sides for the butterflies there. So I've got this is my working card. I'm just going to kind of put this downwards, but we can obviously easily see that that's the working card compared to the others. So what we need to do is every time we need to keep making knots with our working cards, but in between every single one I need to separate out some cards. So I'm going to start at this point. So I take one that's kind of towards my right side there, take that out from the others, and then I also need one at the same time that's towards the left side. So just take the ones that are naturally coming towards those sides. So there we go, we've now got these separated out and just put them out to the side there. And now we're going to kind of pretend like they aren't there and just continue with another knot. So we grab the rest of our cards there, just get this up. So we grab the rest of our cards that are still all the holding cards, there's just 2 fewer now. And then we take the working card, now it's coming out to this side, so I know that my next knot needs to go underneath all the holding cards there to then be able to make my double half hitch on the other side here. And then we'll tighten this, we just tighten this again all the way up below the previous one and do one more for a double. So make sure when you're doing these double half hitches that you're making them nice and tight right underneath each other. So we now have this point, and the working card, instead of coming out to the left side, is now coming out to the right side. So we've just done the one knot, and we have these 2 cards, one on each side, separated out. That's then coming out in between 2 knots up there. So we need to do the same thing again. Separate one out on one side, that's naturally coming towards that side, and one on the other side. And then we take the working card underneath all the holding cards there in the middle to continue as if these 2 weren't there. Make another knot, tighten that all the way up, and then these 2 cards get trapped to go out towards the side, each their own side there, just like that. And that's how we want to separate out all our cards until we only have one left in the middle here. So until we have one left in the middle of our holding cards, and obviously still the working card. When we've then kept separating out the cards here, what I've done is then the very last knot that I did, the double half hitch, was just around the single holding card that we have left then. And I've ended up with 6 of my cards separated out on each side, so that's 12 in total there. So that's what it looks like now. It's then from these cards that we put out to the side that we're going to start making the wings. So before I do that, I just want to again pin my work into place a little bit more. So I'm going to take one of my pins and just pin it right in the bottom there, so on the very last knot that we made, it's just going to help make it more stable to work with, like that, because we need to basically start working on one side at a time, and it's just going to be moving around a lot if we don't use pins. So now we're ready to make that first wing. What I just want to do is the 2 cards pointing down here, this one was the last holding card and that is the working card throughout the centre of the bracelet. We're not incorporating them at this moment in time, so you can either just leave them hanging down or you can put them to the opposite side of what you're working with just to get them out of the way so you don't confuse them. So it doesn't matter what side you start with because we'll be doing the same thing. I'm just going to start on my left side here. So I'll grab the very bottom card first of all that we have separated out. Now that's going to be the holding card in our very first row. So what we need to do is create a row going up the side of the card that we have there where all the cards are coming out from. So that's the holding card. I'll grab the very next one, bring that underneath that holding card, so it comes underneath like that, and then that's going to be the very first working card to create that row. So for all that, we're just going to continue making double half hitches, so bring it around your finger and through the loop, so it looks like that. But when we're tightening this, we need to make sure that the row is going to get tightened very close to the center car. So I bring my holding card upwards and a little bit over to the side as well, so crossing over the car a little bit as I'm tightening my knot, because that means the knot is going to get nice and close right to the side of the car there. Once more to make it a double half hitch, and then tighten that. You can put the working card out of the way, grab the very next card you run into, always make sure to grab the very next one, bring that underneath the holding card to create this row, make a double half hitch with that, and again as you tighten that, make sure you hold the holding card in the direction that you want the row to go. And once more for a double. We're working our way up the side here, put the working card out of the way, grab the next one, and do your double half hitch. Tighten that. You can see the row is slowly starting to build there. And the next one is the second to last one. Make a double half hitch. And you can see that we now have this row right next to the core. Just like that. And the last one, also make a double half hitch with that one, and just finish off this row with this working cord. Just like that. What you can also do is, if you find it a little bit awkward working like that, is you can always work, when you're working on one side at a time, you could turn your board around so it's facing you, so it's a bit easier to make this row, but that's completely up to you. So now that we reach this point where we have this row, what we need to do now is get some more cords ready. So what we'll need is 3 lengths of the same cord here, and these are about 50 centimeters each. So that's what we need to add in per wing. So that's just for the one side here. So we need to make sure we need the 3 cords for this side, and then also 3 when we go to do the other side. I'm just going to show you this for now. So we're then going to take 1 cord at a time of these new lengths that we have, and first off we want to bend it in half, so fold it over, put the ends together, and then you have the middle up here. Keep hold of this loop in the middle, and then the holding cord that we made this row with is coming out towards the top. We need to attach these new cords to this one, so I'm going to take that loop, bring it underneath that holding cord, and then bring the loop back around, put my fingers through and pull the ends through. And that's then a lax head knot. So with that's attached, now we need to just put a bit more spacing in there. So we need to do a half hitch on each side of this lax head knot. So you'll find your cords are coming out naturally to each their own side. Grab the one towards one side, bring it around the top and back around itself. Make sure you come up through the loop there. Tighten that. So that's now sitting on one side of the lax head knot. Take the other one towards the other side and tighten that. So there we go, that's the first one completely attached. Then I'm just going to push this all the way down to where the previous row that we made ends. Just like that, and you want to attach the others in the exact same way. Now I've attached all the other cords as well, and then what we need to do, I'm just going to grab another pin because I just want to secure this row a little bit in place so we can make it easier with the next steps that we need to do. So what you'll have to make sure of is that these new cords that you've added just now, that they're kind of, instead of going further upwards, we need to have an angle here so it's coming out to the side, but that there's a slight angle so it's not straight out to the side, just a little bit up from that. So just something roughly like this. Then I'm just going to put my pin through the very last knot just to hold it in place, make it a little bit easier. So just like that. And then what you'll be able to see is that these new cords are coming downwards, and then the cords from the very first row that we made are coming out to the side, so they're basically crossing over each other like that. And it's now these ones that we want to make our next section of rows with. So we need to just separate our cords out. What you want to do is find the very top one of these long ones that originally we made this row with. So find the very top one, and then all of these you want to make sure are coming out underneath of that. So just bring them underneath, and then again you want to find the very first one. So basically the two that are coming straight in that corner, those are the ones we want to work with first. And you want the short ones, the new ones we attach, to come underneath because they're going to be the working cords. So we want to make double half hitches again around your finger and through the loop, so it looks like that. And then when you tighten it, you want this row to coming underneath all the cords that you just attached. So when you're tightening your knot, hold your holding cord straight underneath there and a little bit upwards, like that. That's the first one. Move on to your next working cord. It's coming underneath. Make a double half hitch, tighten that. You want to try and make sure that your rows that are coming underneath each other are as nice and tight next to each other as possible, so you don't get too much spacing and gaps in between the rows. Grab the next one, and we're just working our way all the way out to the end here, so we used up all these short new cords that we attached. always grabbing the very next cord, making our rows nice and tight. Second to last one of the new ones here. Double half hitch, and then before I make the last one, I'm just going to unpin this just so I can get it nice and tight, and make a double half hitch with the last one here to finish off this row. And you can see we now have two that are straight underneath each other. So like that, we now need to then kind of start making the outer edge as well, and we do that by using the holding cord from the row that we just made, and then the holding cord from the previous one, so from the top one there, the one we just used, the holding cord to make the row we just did, we need to make sure that comes underneath the other one, so the top one crosses over, and then that's the holding cord. So I take the other cord around my finger and through the loop. Then when you tighten this, you want to make sure that that holding cord coming from the top row is pointing downwards now. So we're going to get this angle and little curve here to form the tip of the wing. Make one more for a double. And you're also finishing off the row that you just made there. And there we go. Again, I'm going to put these two that I've just used to end that row out to the side so they get out of the way. And then now, because I have a little bit of work done there, I can take my pin again and then place it back, and I like to put it then in between the rows. Just like that, then we don't damage too much of the cord either by using the pins, but it's going to stay nice and secure now. So go back to all your cords, make sure you separate them out so you have your two separate groups there. Still the ones pointing downwards. We need to then start making a new row, so from the ones coming from the side, so the long ones here, grab the top one now, so it's a new top one. It's coming out right underneath the previous row. We need to make sure that comes over all the short ones, that's a new holding cord. And then you start with the very first short one and just do the exact same thing as before. Make a new row by making your double half hitches with each cord, working your way all the way out towards the side there. Making sure that this row is also straight underneath the previous one, because that's what's going to give this nice pattern and build the shape of the wing for the butterfly here that we're making. So this part is the top wing. So working your way all the way out here, always grabbing the very next cord, getting towards the end, making your double half hitches, and the very last one of these short working cords, do a double half hitch with that. Then once we get to this point, we need to then also finish off this end of that row in the same way as before. The difference is now we need to bring down the holding cord we did right in the corner, but we also need to take the working cord from there. So I'm taking both cords that were out to the side, bringing them both down, so then I have both the holding cord acting as one. Bring that down over the other one, so the holding cord coming from the row is coming underneath those. Do a double half hitch with it, and then as you tighten it again, you hold your holding cord straight downwards and tighten that knot nicely right up underneath the previous one, like that. And now we're building up the side row as well to finish off nicely all these rows. Again, all these three cords we have here now, put them up to the side and get them out of the way. And then basically you continue like this. Grab your very next cord of the long ones here, put that over all the short ones, and then make your new row. Working your way all the way out, and then you'll probably slowly be able to see the shape that's forming here. It's going to be the top part of the top wing. And it's going to be the same thing until we used up all these original long cords coming from the center. And working your way out, we're going to every time make sure to finish off the row in the same way as well. So again, I take the holding cord from the row I've just done, bring it underneath, and you just, every time you do this, you want to make sure to bring all the cords that you put out to the side and they act as one holding cord. So in this case we now have three, and we just do a double half hitch around all of those with the holding cord from the row we just did. So gradually you'll get more and more holding cords here on the side, and you just keep going like this. Find your new one. So now we have 2 ones left, and we're just going to do the same thing again. So I now used up all these long cords that I had coming from the side, and in total we had the original 6 cords coming up there, and then what I've ended up with as well is 6 rows of our knots, all the way from the top until the bottom where we are now. So what we also have, these are all the short ones that we've been making the rows with, and then all the way out here, all the ones we kind of collected along the way, that were all the original ones coming from the core there, and creating that edge on the side. So what we need to do now is also create an edge and kind of frame in the bottom part of this wing. So I'm going to take all these holding cords from that side, bring them over all the short ones here, that's pointing downwards, and then just keep hold of these. These are still all my holding cords now. I want to grab the very first working cord coming underneath that we run into, and then we're going to make a double half hitch with that. So around your finger and through the loop, so you get a 6, and then tighten that all the way up here. Now this first one is going to then create the corner to then move underneath the last row there, a double one, just like that. And then we just keep building this row in the same way, so grabbing the very next one. Now for these ones, when you start using the short cords here to build the bottom row, you don't want to then bring them in as well. You just want to leave them up to the side and just keep taking a new one, making a double half hitch, working in towards the core again. Leave it out to the side, and then you can really start to see this part of the wing or the butterfly then being built up, and we have that nice shape in there because of all these rows that we then kind of framed with this whole, all the rows of knots going around them as well. Oh, I just made a single, just need to make a double. Again, just making sure this row comes right underneath the previous one, and these ones are going to be a bit bulkier, a bit thicker rows because we have so many more holding cords. That's why it also frames it nicely and gives it just a really nice look to it. And the very last one of my working cords, and then we're all the way back in the center. Tighten it nicely. Make sure it comes in just right like that. So all these holding cords are now pointing in towards the center there. And then basically what you want to do now is repeat all this that I've just showed you here on the other side. So the holding cords are still staying to the same side that we've been using them. So you can put them out to the side. The 2 cords that were coming down in the middle there are still the original one that's still part of the core, and then the working cord from the core. Also still not using them, so put them out to the side. So all we have left that we then need to start using now are all the cords on the opposite side. So that's these 6 ones, and you basically just want to be doing the exact same thing. You're only doing it mirrored from the other side. So we need to start making the first row going up, then attach the new cords going out, the same ones and the same amount and the same length as on that side, and then build your rows and frame them in using all your holding cords. Add them up as you go, and then you'll have both sides ready of the top wings. So as you can see, now that I made the wing on the other side as well, they match nicely. So this is going to be the top part of the butterfly wings, so the large ones. And then what we have left now, all these that I put out to the sides are the short ones that we added. So I'm just going to leave them to the side to kind of like to keep them all separate from each other in groups so I know which cords are which. And then all these ones are the ones that were the holding cords there, forming that chunky row on the bottom. Again, they're both pointing kind of towards the middle, but I'm just keeping them to their own side for now. And then these 2 in the middle are the original single holding cord we have left from the core, and then the working cord also creating that core. So now what we need to do is bring some of all this together. So just these 2 from the middle. The holding cord comes straight down. The working cord I just want to separate out to make sure I don't accidentally bring that in with my holding cords. So in my case, the last knot that I did, my working cord is coming out towards my left side, so I'm just going to place it there for now. Then I need to bring all these 2 groups coming from each their own side from that last row, that were the holding cords, into the middle again with that single holding cord. These are all going to be, like I said, these are the original core ones that create the core. So they're going to bring them into that again. So I take my then working cord there, because it's coming out to this side, I know I need to swap it over to the opposite side before I make my next knot. So I'll bring that over and then I'll make one double half hitch the exact same way. Then as I'm tightening that, I'm tightening it up right up underneath the previous where we ended the core and where all of these cords from the sides are coming in. So you can just take your time, make sure it sits nicely and tighten it nicely as well. So it's going to sit just how you want it to. Make another one for a double half hitch. Like that. And then just try and close up that gap we're going to have there as much as you can. You can also just, before we move on, just take some of the cords, pull them through a few at a time there. Because then you're pulling, if any of them seem a little bit loose up there, you're pulling them all the way through and tightening the whole thing up a little bit. So you can just do that until you're happy with how it sits. And then we need to start on the bottom part of the wings. And for that we again need to separate some of the holding cords from the middle out towards the sides, but not as many as we did the first time. So before we move on and make the next knots, we only just made one double half hitch there before we make the next one, because we want to make sure we don't have too big of a gap between the top and the bottom wings there, because that'll look a bit weird. We need to be able to connect them. Separate a cord out to each their own side, just like this, and then take your working cord back underneath to the opposite side. So as you can see, same principles when we started separating out the first cords for the top wings there, and then make your double half hitch. And then what you want to do is separate out cords so you end up having 3 of these long ones on each side there, and then we just have the rest as the holding cords still. Once you've then got your 3 cords on each side there of the core, make sure they come out to the side, then we have all these holding cords left in the middle, that's fine, and then the working cord as well. So again, I'm going to start on one side, so I just want to put all these out to the opposite side to get them out of the way so we don't mix them up. And then I want to start on this side here, just the same, doesn't matter what side you start with. But then what we have is these 3 cords coming from the middle. I want to grab the very top one of the 3. That's going to be a first holding cord. Then we need to bring these cords back into it, but we're not using all of them. We need to take the very last one out and just leave that out to the side, because we're not going to be using that, because we want to make sure this bottom wing is smaller than the top one to keep the proportions right. So we need to bring the short ones underneath that top holding cord from the side, and then we just make another row here. So I start making my double half hitches with the short cords working our way out towards the side, and having this row coming pretty much straight underneath the bottom of the top wing there. And now second to last one, and then what I just want to do with the last one, I don't want this row to come straight out, I just want this to start going downwards just a little bit. So when you're tightening this, you want to just be able to see a little bit of that bare cord right there in the corner between the 2 wings, just to start giving it a nice curve. So just like that, that's the first row. To move on and make the next row, we then grab the very next cord, or the long ones coming from the middle, bring the short ones underneath that and start making your next row all the way out to the side, grabbing each one to the very next cord that you run into. Again, just like every other time, make sure you always grab the next one so the cords aren't crossing over each other there, because that can end up getting a little bit messy. Work your way all the way out to the side, the end of this row. Used up all the working cords now, and then it's the same principle as up here. We want to also make a bit of a border along the outside. So for that, the holding cord we used for this row we just done needs to come underneath the holding cord from the top row, and then that one that comes underneath is the working cord. So we just make a double half hitch with that, and again this now needs to be pointing downwards, the holding cord, to come around at that angle. And we want to try and make this a bit of a gentle curve on this bottom part, and put these 2 that you just used back up to the side again. So go back to start your next row. So this is the last of the 3 cords that we left out from the core. Bring that over all the short ones, and then just make your next row in the exact same way. And again, like before with the top ones, making sure each row is nice and tight underneath the previous one. So this is going to be the last full length row in this bottom wing, but then we also need to accommodate this shape a little bit compared to the top one that we made. It needs to be a bit different. The last one, and the same principle, the holding cord goes out, and then the holding cord from the row that we just made comes out to the side, needs to go underneath the two cords above it there, bring down, then now the holding cord, to keep making this edge on this side. Just like that. So now we have these 3 rows that we've done, and then edging the side of them as well. So to be able to create a little bit of a different shape down here, what I'm going to do is these short cords that we've been working with, creating the rows with, I'm going to take the very first one out and then grab the very next one in, so the second one in from the middle of the full bracelet there, bring that over, so this is now going to be my new holding cord, bring that over the others here, so we're left with 3 of the short cords underneath there. Grab the very next one to start off your next row, so you can see that's starting a little bit off from the previous ones. Then work your way all the way out in this case, so using all these short cords. Like that. And then the holding cord from that row we just done, again same principle. You need to just frame that off as well. So we bring all the others where we now have 3 holding cords coming downwards, and then we just make a double half hitch with the short holding cord from that row we just made now. Tighten this. We're going to stack this coming around in a curve around the bottom as well. And now the short holding cords, when you use them and point them outwards on the bottom part of the wings, we're not going to be using them anymore, so just put them out to the side. Go back to your other cords here, just separate them out, have a look at them. So what we are left with now is these 3 holding cords from the row we just did, and then we also have the one that we left out from that row, but you just want to keep having that left out for now. And then in the next row, the very last little one we're just going to do, you want to also leave out the very first one. Grab then the one that's in the middle of these 3, bring that out over the other one, and just make one double half hitch here. The very last one. It's going to be the very last row and also a very small one. And then same again, that holding cord needs to come out underneath all the others and make double half hitch to frame the piece nicely. We're starting to come underneath the bottom wing now. I'm getting that nice shape in. So once you have that, again put that to the side. So now we need to just start finishing off the framework on this bottom wing. So we're using one at a time of these short cords that we've been working with. Again, I grab the very next one that I run into, bring that underneath all the others here. We're going to have this frame row go all the way around the bottom and in towards the middle again. Do a double half hitch with that. Tighten that nicely. You can see we're going around the bottom. Grab the very next one. That's the one we left out from the last row that we did. So we're kind of working our way inwards and also a little bit upwards. Tighten that. You want to make sure you tighten these quite nicely to make sure that the row is going to follow the outline properly. And you're not going to end up with some big gaps in between your knotwork. The very last one is the very first one you left out of the short ones. Also bring that underneath and do your double half hitch, and again make sure you make this nice and tight so it really brings this row inwards and upwards, just like that. And then all these holding cords that we used, the ones we originally separated out, have now been brought back into the middle again. These short ones, just put them to the side. We're completely done with them on this side because we made the bottom part. Then all we need to do now is move over to the other side again. So just get everything else out of the way. These ones are the middle ones, left of the holding cords in the middle. This is the working cord in the middle. Put them to the opposite side. and then start working with these. And we just want to do the same thing that we did on here, just working on the opposite side. So use these 3 long ones from the middle, make your rows with all these short ones, and then make sure you get that nice shape in there. So do the exact same thing. So I've then made the other side as well to match, and then basically you can see we're pretty much at the same point as we were with the large ones up there, that we have all the holding cords from the outer frame that we've done coming in towards the middle. We just have less of them than there, but that doesn't matter. And then in the middle here we have all the original holding cords from the core that were left out for the small ones, and then the working cord is this one. So again, we just want to bring these holding cords from each side in with the holding cords in the middle there, and then just kind of seal the end of this butterfly in place by using the working cord from the core, go back to the opposite side and where it's ended up, and then make your double half hitch around all these holding cords. We now have them all collected again in the middle here, this center of the bracelet, and then just tighten this all the way up right underneath where these cords from the side are joining in. And then once you've done that, you've basically finished the very first butterfly. Then obviously in this case I'm just going to keep making some double half hitches here in the middle to create a bit of a core again, working my way down just to get a bit of spacing, to then have some space in between each butterfly before you then get down to a point where you want to make the next one. But this is basically how you make the butterfly. And then how much spacing you want between each one is obviously up to you. If you want it to be even in between each butterfly, you can either count the amount of knots that you're doing here, so you get the same amount in between, or what you could also do is just get a ruler and then basically just say if you want 2.5 centimeters or 2 centimeters or something, and just measure right from the bottom and then down to where you want the next one to start. So it's completely up to you how you want to do that, but you just want to do a bit of spacing here, and then you can start making your new butterfly in the exact same way that I've just showed you here. All you want to then do as well for this final butterfly that we've just done now, to finish it off, is obviously get rid of all these cords that we left, so the short ones that we added in at the top, we just need to get rid of those as well. But I'm just going to do a few more knots here to just have some spacing, and then I'm going to show you how I'm going to finish those off. So to finish off these ends, I'm going to just unpin it here. And you can either leave this to the very end till you've done all your butterflies, or you can do it one at a time, because these cords might get in the way a little bit, or you can pin them out of the way if you want to. It's completely up to you. Then if you're using a synthetic cord, you can do what I'm going to do here. So I'm just going to take my scissor and just go around each cord. So I have this single one. I'm going to cut this down so I have about 1 millimeter or so left of it sticking out, just like that. And then I'm going to get a lighter here and singe down the end. Obviously you want to be careful doing this because it is a naked flame. Just gently singe down the end there, just kind of melting the cord, and then you can just press it in, and that's going to seal it off. So it gives a nice neat finish, but also it's going to not come undone because we sealed it in place. You can go around and do that on all of them. Now if you're not comfortable using naked flame here, or if you're using a non-synthetic cord, so a more natural cord, where you can't use the flame, you can also just use some glue. So put a bit of glue around just where your cords are coming out basically, so right around there where the knots are, and then you can let it dry for a bit and cut off the excess. So it's completely up to you how you want to do that, but you want to finish all the cords off like that, and when you've done that, your butterfly here will be completely done, and you can move on and do more if you want to. So I've now gone on here and made more butterflies after each other with some spacing in between, and it ends up looking something like this. So, like I said, these are obviously a little bit large, so you can quite easily change up the cord and use a thinner cord, and you get some really nice and delicate ones. That'd be quite a cute bracelet as well. So all that's left to do now is finish off the ends here. So you can do that however you want really. What I'm going to be doing is using some cord ends that look like this. So you just put your cord inside there and clamp them down, give a nice neat finish. So you finish off the ends, and then once you've done that, then your bracelet, or whatever you want this to be, will be done. Now that I've then put on my cord ends here, I've also attached my clasp and extender chain on the other end, and then this is the finished bracelet, if that's what you want to make it. This one does fit to be a bracelet size. And then you just use a clasp here. And then you'll have your butterflies going all the way around like that. And obviously, like I said, if you want to make it more delicate, that'd be really nice as well. But then this is how you make these butterflies on that core running all the way down the middle. So make a really nice bracelet or a hairband or whatever you can think of. So that's how you make this and doing this technique. So I really hope that you enjoyed this tutorial and that you found it useful as well. And thank you very much for watching. Hello there everyone. Today I'm going to show you how to make this macrame bracelet. And it looks like this. So this is the effect that you get. I'm using some larger beads here running through the whole middle of the bracelet, and these are just some purple agate that I'm using, but then I have the smaller beads surrounding the larger ones in each section here. So this is just one example. Another one is this, and that's the one I'm going to be showing you in the video how to do.